Right. It's just after 6 o'clock, so I shall make the start. Progress. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome
Good
to
evening,
the
sir.
Criminal Justice Advisory Group. My name is Babs Akinyanju, and I am the founder of the group CJAG, also known as CJAG, and I am your host tonight. Um, if I may start just by dealing with some housekeeping. If you may keep your microphones on mute during the session, please feel free to write comments or questions you may want to ask in the chat box, and I will deal with them during the plenary session. This event is being recorded on Zoom, and it will also be recorded on YouTube. So presumably, I have your consent for that. If there are any queries or comments, even after this session, please do drop me a line. My email address is CJAG, that is CJAG @gmail.com. It's going to appear in the chat box. Right, so the topic for tonight is improving road safety of heavy goods vehicles in Nigeria. I chose this topic because of, well, the incidents I myself have experienced. I'm living in Nigeria previously, and even when I traveled there, and also speaking to friends, family members, and you know what one sees in the media. According to a WHO Global Status Report of 2018, 39,000 Nigerians lose their lives annually to road traffic accidents. Now, this is not all down to heavy goods vehicles. And by heavy goods vehicles, I mean all manner of trucks, lorries, petrol tankers, tippers, articulated trucks, and so forth. I mean, I'm not an expert in construction. We'll be hearing from the experts in a moment. But that figure, like I say, really is just not acceptable to lose that many lives. So that really is my motivation for holding this event. Now, I'm going to move straight on to introducing the speakers. My first speaker is Commissioner for Lagos State. I'm very grateful that he and in fact all the other speakers have given up their time on a Friday evening to join us. So if I may just move briefly, I would introduce the speaker. I know Dr. Oladende has other commitments, so he may not be able to be with us up to the end. But like I say, if you have any comments or queries, I could always pass them on later on. So first speaker is the Honorable Commissioner for Lagos State, Dr. Frederick Oladende. He's Commissioner for Transportation and responsible for planning, developing, and implementing state policies on transportation. He holds a PhD in transport planning and modeling from Imperial College and is a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, UK. Dr. Oladende was previously a senior consultant at Oscar Faber, now known as ACOM, and worked for the Department for Transport as a senior transport planning advisor, both in Lagos. In 2008, he returned to Lagos, where he headed the Transport Planning Unit of the Lagos Metropolitan Transport Authority, Lamata. In 2019, His Excellency Governor Sanwo-Olu appointed Dr. Oladende as a commissioner. So, Dr. Oladende, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll just try and share my screen and hopefully.
If I may just say that the reason why he has his mask on is that—
No, it's okay. I'll take it off. I'll take it off. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for inviting me. I hope you can hear me and you can see my screen.
Yes, sir.
So what I'm going to be talking about today will be specific to Lagos. I know the topic is about safety in Nigeria, but I'll speak about what's happening in Lagos, and Lagos is quite a reflection of what happens in Nigeria. Lagos used to be the capital of Nigeria, but that capital had moved to Abuja. However, Lagos still remains the economic capital of Nigeria. So just for those of you who are not familiar with Lagos, I just thought I should put this slide here and just give you a rundown of why Nigeria is important. I mean, why Lagos is important to Nigeria. So Lagos currently has about 22 million people out of 220 million in Nigeria. So about 10% of the population of Lagos resides, of Nigeria resides in Lagos. I keep mixing them. Lagos State is bigger in population than 23 countries in Africa. Now, Lagos State, when you look at the size of Lagos State, and this will become important as I go along in my presentation, it's about 0.4% of the whole Nigeria. So Lagos State is quite small. And of the 0.4%, a third of it is actually water, which makes water transportation more important in Lagos than ever. Lagos State, as I've said, continues to be the economic, commercial, and industrial hub of Nigeria. Lagos State contributes a quarter of Nigeria's GDP. In terms of the economy, it's bigger than Ivory Coast, which is a country in Africa, Ghana, Madagascar, etc. And close to half of the skilled manpower in Nigeria actually resides in Lagos. And that makes Lagos a very important state, and a state where we have to ensure that things work properly. Now, going straight to the topic of today, let me just move these pictures down. So as Mr. Babatunde said, we carried out a study in Lagos, and based on our statistics in 2019, we have about 5,800 articulated vehicles that come in and then go out of Lagos on a daily basis. And for a size of Lagos, that's quite a lot of vehicles. And these vehicles are broken down into, you have the trucks, you have tankers, and then you have the articulated multi-axle vehicles. In terms of the damage they do to Lagos, so in 2018, we recorded about 1,934 accidents as a result of the heavy goods vehicles. And in 2019, we recorded 1,671. Now, the kind of accidents that we record with these vehicles are quite horrific. Sometimes they hit, like the piers of a bridge, and then they get it burnt down, or all of a sudden they just tumble. And especially if it's a tanker, quite a number of vehicles catch fire. And so what we see on a daily basis on our road is quite horrific, and that has prompted the government to respond and then to put in some regulations as well as some measures in place. And I'll be talking about those measures and regulations that we're trying to put in place, even though I'm getting some resistance from Abuja, which is why I said Abuja is one of my problems. So what are the challenges that we have in Lagos? Let's begin to break them down a little bit. So articulated vehicles come from all parts of Lagos, from all parts of Nigeria. So Lagos being the capital and Lagos having the central port means that 60% to 70% of all our products come in through Lagos, and then they go to the other part of the country. And what we have experienced in Lagos is that there are a lot of drivers that come in from the north, a lot of drivers from the east, in particular from the north, who can't speak good English, who don't understand Lagos. So they just come in, they don't understand the direction, they don't understand, they can't read the signs, and then they just begin to hit our barriers. Most of these vehicles are not roadworthy, and so they use our barriers, or in fact, they use buildings as a weapon to stop, especially when their brakes fail. And as a result of that, they carry along with it a lot of lives, which we are experiencing every day. Part of the problems we also have in Lagos, because Lagos is the mini Nigeria, so you have all kinds of people from different parts that work in Lagos. So we have a lack of collaboration between the police, the Federal Road Safety Corps, and the military personnel. And that's due to a bit of corruption that is happening in Lagos. And so everybody wants to mind their own space and nobody's working. They're not working collaboratively in such a way that they're able to defend the state and ensure that our roads are safe. One of the biggest problems that we have in Lagos is also the lack of truck parks. So in the law that we have in Lagos, if you want to operate a logistic business and you have your yard or your terminal in Lagos, you must have a parking bay. But most of these people do not have parking bays. And so what happens is that they park on the roads. And when you look at what is happening in Apapa, getting to Apapa is a nightmare because all these guys park on the road, they queue on the road. And so they eat up most of the capacity on our roads. Lagos also, because of the kind of regime we've run in the past, moving from military to the civilian, etc. So there's been a lack of investment, especially when the capital moved to Abuja. So the investment that used to go into our road infrastructure reduced significantly. And so we have bad infrastructure, and then so you find heavy good vehicles going into potholes and then like tumbling over because the center of gravity is quite low. And most of the drivers, because in the 80s and 90s, you used to get a lot of old drivers, people that are experienced, driving these heavy goods vehicles. Nowadays, what you have is kids driving these vehicles. They're not experienced. The vehicles, sometimes they struggle, they wrestle with the vehicles, and so you find them drinking all kinds of gins, drugs, etc., just to keep awake and then just to be able to control and maneuver the vehicles around Lagos. And all these are challenges that we face in Lagos, and as a result of that, some of them have been driving for like maybe 10 hours, no sleep. There's no place to park and rest. And that constitutes a major problem, especially in Lagos being the last destination, especially if they're set up from the north and then they've been driving for hours before they get to Lagos. So what kind of interventions are we bringing in? So first of all, we set up a law. We set up a law in 2012, and then it was revised in 2018. And what we wanted to do was to restrict heavy goods vehicles to nighttime travel. So from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., we don't want to see heavy goods vehicles on our road. And then from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m., they can come in, go to the port or where they have to load and then just get out. But obviously, we're facing resistance from Abuja saying that port business must be a 24-hour business. And so we're still wrestling with our people in Abuja just to make sure that we can enforce that. We've also mapped out what we call the truck route. And so one of our expressway called Owoloshoke Apapa Apapa-Wodoshoki Expressway has been designated as a truck route, and then some other roads that link to it. So that's the only route where we want to see trucks come in and then go out of Lagos. And then if you have to distribute goods around Lagos, you then have to strip and then move your containers into smaller vehicles and then move around Lagos so that you can then distribute your load within Lagos. And then we're also working with the private sector to bring in technology such as trackers so that we can track every vehicle that comes into Lagos. We know where they are. If they're breaking the law, we can apprehend them and then give them a fine. But just to be able to gain control of what's happening on our roads. Specific interventions include, you will have heard that Lagos State, before Lagos State took over the enforcement of the way heavy goods vehicles move around Lagos, we had what we call the Presidential Task Force set up by the president, headed by the vice president, when Apapa got to a point where, it was a no-go area. And so these guys came in and they tried to resolve the issues in Apapa, but they could not resolve it. In fact, most of it, the situation was because even the officials who were supposed to be on the board became corrupt because of the kind of money they saw there. And so we had to say to them, you know what, enough is enough. Lagos State needs to take over. So we set up our own task force just to ensure that we can control what is happening on our roads. In collaboration with the federal government, we've also launched the call-up system called the ATO system. And the idea is that we will set up various truck parks in Lagos. We would link them with the call-up system. And if you do not have any business in Lagos on any particular day, you don't need to come into Lagos. Now, what normally happens is that about 40% of the trucks that you see in Lagos have no business in Lagos. They're looking for business, so they're just driving around, hoping that someone will call them and then parking and eating up some of the capacity on our roads. And so this e-call-up system would ensure that if you're not in a truck bay and you're not called up and you're seen on our road on the road, we can actually pick up that vehicle, we can tow it and then take it to a yard where you then have to pay a hefty fine and before it's released. And then we've empowered our enforcement agents such as LASMA, VIS, and MOT to ensure that they go around inspecting vehicles. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the truck bay because they're very important to us checking these vehicles, making sure that they are roadworthy. We also have a lot of bonded terminals where these officers go into to inspect the vehicles before they're released. So general intervention includes the rehabilitation of Lily Pond. Lily Pond is the holding bay before you actually go into the port. It's been expanded. Lagos State has actually contributed about 31 hectares of land for it to be developed into a truck park so that it can hold about 3,000 vehicles, heavy goods vehicles. Lagos State has introduced what it calls the Lagos State Computerized Vehicle Inspection Center. And the idea here is that every truck park would have this kind of center where we go into the truck parks, we inspect the vehicles before they're called up. If your vehicles are not roadworthy, we will not let you go. You have to go into those parks and then make sure that you fix those vehicles and then before they're released. And that's important for controlling the amount of vehicles that are not roadworthy on our roads. We have what we call the Lagos State Drivers Institute, where we send people that want to drive trucks must be certified. And we're also working with the union just to make sure that people that actually join the union, the drivers union, are actually certified. So we're working with the union, we're working with the Drivers Institute to train these people. And then Lagos State is continuously, Lagos State as of now is a construction zone. So everywhere, there's a lot of construction. We're rehabilitating the roads just to make sure that we make our roads motorable. We're also partnering with the private sector. So you have heard that Dangote is also reconstructing the Apapa-Wodoshoki Expressway, making it a rigid pavement rather than the asphalt that we that we've been used to, so that these roads can last longer and then the vehicles can drive safely on them. So what kind of partnership are we also developing in Lagos? So we are discussing with the Nigerian Ports Authority. We're looking at their safety standards. We have sat down with them to say, look, before you serve any vehicle that come into your port, make sure that you inspect, they are roadworthy, and if they are not, send them back to one of our computerized inspection center. Let us service the vehicle. Let's make sure that it's roadworthy before you actually serve them. So there's that collaboration going on between NPA and Lagos State. Obviously, you get some staff who are corrupt, who get some, take money behind and then let these vehicles go. But we are beginning to clamp down on that. And we're talking to the Department of Petroleum Resources just to make sure that we clamp down on tankers that carry more than 45,000 liters of petrol. Because what you find in Nigeria in particular is that most of these vehicles, the head is designed to carry about 30 to 45, but you see them carrying about 60 to 90. And so when they're climbing on a bridge, they're actually struggling. And in some cases, some of them roll back, they roll into cars, they catch, like they set the whole place on fire. And we experience a lot of casualties. So we're beginning to work with the Department of Petroleum Resources to ensure that we clamp down on these people that violate the law. As I've said, we are collaborating with the union to ensure that only certified drivers join the union and only certified drivers actually drive the vehicles. So there are 9 entry points into Lagos, and we are working with the federal government to ensure that we put weight bridge. And it's a way of measuring what you're carrying to ensure that what you're carrying is commensurate to the head, and the head is able to drag the load that you're carrying. Most importantly, if you're carrying excess luggage, we will just take out the excess and then put it in a bonded terminal somewhere, where if you don't come back and claim it, it's sold off to some other individuals. And then the most important one, and this is the one that is important for us. So when you look at the 5,000 to 6,000 trucks that come into Lagos and that are around Nigeria, you'll find out that the average age is about 40 years old. That's too old. And when you talk to drivers or owners, they say, oh, well, trucks they're quite expensive. They can afford brand new trucks. So we're discussing with the federal government to see how we can develop a scheme so that these people can replace their trucks with new trucks. And so the government has to come in. There has to be some kind of subsidy or some kind of scheme that ensures that they're able to repay at a very reasonable interest rate. So we are beginning to discuss with the federal government to see how we can do that, because most of the trucks in Nigeria has to go. There's no two ways about it. They're too old. They've passed their sell-by date, but we're still using them to drag tons of loads across the country, and in particular Lagos. And that's why you find them breaking down, and that's why you find them struggling on the bridge. That's why you find them tumbling, even when they go through even a small pothole. So that's the kind of partnership that we're doing with the federal government, just to ensure that we replace the old fleet with brand new ones that are fit for purpose. So I just thought I should just put in one diagram just to show you that we're beginning to look at. You can see how young these guys are driving trucks that are bigger than them. In those days, we used to have, to drive a truck, you must be like 50, 60 years, and that comes with a lot of experience. But you find 18 years old, 19 years old driving trucks nowadays, especially from the north. So in conclusion, the government of Lagos State is continuously working in collaboration with the federal government just to improve road safety. So I've talked about the scheme. I've talked about the safety measures that we want to standardize, working with MPA. And most importantly, we have set up inspection centers. We've set up 24. We want to get to 57 so that trucks can go into any of them. We can check them as quickly as possible. We have these inspectors that will go into all these truck parks, make sure that trucks that are not roadworthy are not allowed out of the truck park, and so that way we can keep our roads safe. So that's in a nutshell is what we're doing in Lagos. I'm hoping that we can go far and we can gain the cooperation of all the states in Lagos, and in particular the federal government. Because what we're going through in Lagos is quite unfair. Lagos seems to be getting the brunt of most of the accidents that's happening in Nigeria, and that's because we house the major port, we house the major airport also, and then the headquarters of most of these logistics institutions is in Lagos, and so something has to be done fast just to make sure that we improved the road safety element of heavy goods vehicle in Lagos. So let me stop there, and I'll say thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm Dr. Oladende. So just to explain the nuances for those who might not be aware, when Dr. Oladende was referring to Abuja, that of course is the seat of the federal government. And as we know, we run a federal structure. There is the Federal Ministry of Transport, which is responsible for transport policy all over the country. But I think the point you have made really loud and clear is the need for collaboration between various agencies, whether government agencies like the federal government, or Nigerian Ports Authority, or law enforcement, really in ensuring that, well, one, there is kind of a smooth transition, a smooth transportation system to ensure that, goods that come through the ports get to their destinations, and of course, dealing with the safety issue. So there's quite a lot to really ponder, and thank you for the figures that you have provided, because I think they just give us an idea of the scale of the problem. And I know when you're talking about, for example, finance and training and so forth, I'm hoping that in time there'll be collaboration with those of us in the diaspora and who hold relevant skills, like you yourself, Dr. Oladende. We are once you were once working in the UK, and it was really your experience and skills that you have taken back to Nigeria and are putting to very good use. So I know that at some point, you might have to go, but I hope you'll be able to stay on as long as possible. Our next speaker is based in the UK, but very well versed in the kind of technicalities of road safety. So Paul Tideman is a senior consultant at the Forensic Collision Investigation and Reconstruction Limited, FCIR for short. This is a company that is based in Croydon, just outside London. Paul has 30 plus years experience in the field of collision investigation. He has given evidence in both criminal and civil cases. In fact, I had anticipated holding this event last week, but I know that Paul was involved or was due to be involved in a week-long trial, and probably involving issues arising from what we are discussing today. Paul has been involved in the investigation of over 3,000 road traffic accidents or incidents. I believe he started life as a traffic officer with the Metropolitan Police, and he spent 26 years in the Met Police. And over that time, he's also been an examiner of the Institute of Advanced Motorists, where he conducts advanced training tests for car, motorcycle, and commercial drivers. Paul is a licentiate of the City and Guilds Institute, an advanced automotive engineer, and a member of the Institute of the Motor Industry in the UK. So Paul, thank you very much for joining us. And if you may start, thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for that introduction, Babs. Let's just see if everybody's got that screen up now. It's in a way quite shocking listening to the figures that our previous speaker has spoken about, with figures of about 39,000 deaths on your roads every year. And as a comparison, I think that if we prorated the figures for the UK to your population, we would have about 6,000 deaths a year compared to the 39,000 that you're dealing with. Now, for those of you that have spent time in the UK, obviously you can see that things are highly regulated in the UK, both around operators, the training of drivers, legislation around drivers' hours, and other safety things. So some of the measures that you've been talking about are clearly going a long way towards improving in bringing those figures down, and they should be applauded, really. Babs approached us to just give a presentation, and initially we were talking about perhaps trying to deal with some of the issues that you've spoken of, but in the end, Babs just asked perhaps that we just give you a insight into how we in the UK approach collision investigation. As Babs said, I've been involved in this field for about 31 years now, and I've seen some huge changes in how the job is approached, both as a police officer and working independently in the private sector. So I'm just going to give you a run through of the mindset that we have, because anything involved in the investigation side always feeds back into an understanding for the authorities and those that set effectively the laws that govern the country. The more information there is, the more understanding there can be about what the issues are. So that's effectively what I'm going to do. I shall probably breeze through fairly quickly because there could be quite a lot here, and it may be of limited value to you moving forwards, but nevertheless, I hope it's of some use to you. So effectively, what is it we're trying to achieve as collision investigators? We're effectively using a number of tools in our toolbox to work out what happened in any given situation, and to work out why it happens, whether that's due to vehicle defects, perhaps leading to an uncontrolled or a loss of control, or whether it's an error that's perhaps been made by a driver. So we're always looking to determine what has happened and why. How do we do that? Well, we're looking at some mathematical principles. We use physics in terms of Newtonian physics, in terms of laws of motions. We will have some understanding of the engineering that's involved in the vehicles, and how that affects their handling and braking and steering and all that sort of thing. We also are trained and look into the statements of witnesses and assist the court in whether those statements are likely to be correct or otherwise, because unfortunately witness evidence can be sometimes plainly wrong, or a witness's recollection of something can also be affected by other out of lying things like other people's statements as well, and that sort of thing. So we take all of these things and bring them together, as it were, to work out what's happened. So why do we need to go through this process? Well, there are 2 or 3 courts in the land, and I'm sure you'll know different. If there's the likelihood of offences against the driver, then we need to know what that driver has done, because we need to know whether there's a criminal liability, especially if there's a death. In the UK, if the manner of driving has fallen far below what is considered careful and competent, you're looking at a maximum prison term of about 14 years. And then, of course, there's the other side, the compensation for either the deceased or injured parties. So all of these things play into wanting to get to the bottom of the answer as to what happened. If there's a collision, we probably want to know what a vehicle's approach speed was. We probably want to know where the vehicle was positioned on the road. Was it acceptable? If a pedestrian is involved, we need to know perhaps how long they've been in the road. We need to look at the road layout itself. Is there an engineering answer? Could the road be restructured to minimize the same type of accident happening again? We look at reaction times of drivers. Was it appropriate? Is it what a driver should have been, or could there be some source of distraction, such as mobile phone use and that sort of thing? So there are a number of disciplines that we need to look at, and we need to look at things like vehicle defects as well when we're looking at anything that's involved in a collision. So there are a number of disciplines that we bring to bear. So yes, we need to find out actually what happened, but also we perhaps need to go slightly further than that. As well as determining what happened, we need to be answering questions such as, well, if a vehicle was speeding, if it had been traveling at the correct speed, in terms of the speed limit, would the accident have been avoidable? How fast then should they have been traveling for that particular piece of road? We'll look at things like the lighting on a vehicle. Is the lighting sufficient? Could it have caused a problem? Would a light out on a vehicle at night have affected the ultimate result of the accident? So there are many things that we will consider when we bring our skills to bear on an accident. So it's not just a question of working out what did happen. We need to work out what would have happened if there are a certain number of questions that are raised. So that's ultimately what we do. Now, over the years, things have changed, and they've changed massively for collision investigators because of there's always ongoing techniques that are being developed as vehicles change, as technology on vehicles change, and also when there are other tools that we can use to determine what has happened. And in the UK, one of the sources of information that we use on a very frequent basis is CCTV footage or footage from mobile phones and other camera sources, because they're so prevalent. So what sort of techniques are we looking at, and what do we use now in the UK? Well, ultimately, it all starts at the scene. And if it's a serious collision, then the police will be called, and every police service in the UK has its own collision investigators that are trained pretty much to the same standard, because it's been nationalized in terms of now there is only one training body that's providing training needs. And the whole of collision investigation at the moment in the police service is being regulated underneath the forensic regulator. So every aspect of how the job is carried out is now being looked at. And the idea is to try and standardize how the job is done across the whole of the UK. So generally, we're relying on, in private practice, on what the police secure when they first go to the scene. However, there's things that we can do even if police weren't called, and we get instructed by solicitors or individuals who want answers. So we'll have a look at that in a moment. These days in the UK, most police services are now using 3D laser scanners, which are the piece of equipment you can see on this slide in front, which is a very quick way of obtaining pretty much all of the evidence that there is at a scene, and creating a 3D virtual scene that we can then go back to and look through and use for the work that we're doing. So it used to be in the old days that we would turn up and take manual measurements and perhaps arrive at a plan like you see here on the slide in front of you. That would be very labor intensive, and in the old days would literally just be done with a measuring wheel or a tape measure, where numerous measurements had to be taken and then it had to be drawn by hand. We've then moved through different types of surveying equipment to the point where we now can produce 2D plans. But this is, if you just watch through now what we've got, this is an overlay of a plan view of a 3D image. So the whole of the area is now captured in the level of detail that you can see here. So what it means is that you can actually literally fly through or drive through a scene as it would have been for the driver or the parties involved. So there's a huge amount of data that we can obtain in a relatively short period of time with this type of technology. And once we've obtained it, it's then there to be used in various ways as we move forwards. So this was a scene where a vehicle had travelled through the traffic light junction and had struck a pedestrian to one side of the junction. So let me just move on. So within the 3D point cloud that you've just seen us fly through, we can take various measurements within the point cloud to see widths of road, movement of pedestrians, and so on. So the idea being with this, as I say, in the old days, we'd have a very limited number of measurements. And it's quite possible that the investigator actually could overlook what was a key piece of evidence. All you were relying on was whoever attended the scene deciding what was important and measuring that. Whereas, of course, with what you've just seen, we can go to any part of that scene and find out anything that might not have been mentioned by the original collision investigator. So it gives us a host of additional options. One of the things I said earlier was that witnesses quite often are wrong. So it means, again, that we can do, for instance, looking at perhaps the window that you see in the building, the bay window there. A witness might well see, I was standing in my living room, I looked out and I saw the car strike the pedestrian. What you would be able to see within the 3D point cloud is that perhaps that witness couldn't have possibly seen something happening where they said it was, i.e. they're introducing evidence that perhaps they've heard from another source. So it means that we can be we can accurately test witness evidence. So in this particular case, we now have this is the same junction that we've looked at, but what you can see there is a vehicle traveling through followed by the motorcycle. And that vehicle struck a pedestrian just outside of the camera view. So what we can do effectively is when we have CCTV footage, we can use it to determine the speed of the vehicle as it passes through. And the way we can do that is taking two positions between two individual CCTV frames, where we can carry out an analysis on the CCTV to determine the time between frames. And then we can move into our 3D scanned area and overlay the CCTV footage. You'll notice here there are certain points that we've chosen, like the end of a line where it meets a curb, changes of road surface, various features like the end of a line, where we can then tie in the CCTV frame to what is a very accurate scanned image of actually what existed there in terms of road layout. So there's where you've got an overlay of the actual CCTV image placed over the scanned data of that scene. You can see that there's a car in the middle of there, and we can place within that we can place the two images together by matching up various areas that you can see, and we can then place a model of the vehicle within the image of the scanned data, and we can do that for both positions, and then we have an accurate position of the vehicles within that scene where it might have been apparent that there was nothing that we could actually tie or match the position of the vehicle to in terms of other features. But it then means we can be very accurate in placing the vehicle, and we can then work out a speed of the vehicle from that technique. So that's just one of the ways that we can use the data from 3D laser scanning. If we have just maybe even a mobile phone image that somebody's taken at a collision that the police weren't involved in or called to, such as the image that you have in front of you, where there's a very slight mark on the road, we can then scan the environment again. We can overlay that photograph accurately, and by doing that, we can then take the mark that was in that photograph and place it in the 3D image. You can see here, we can now look down and see where that mark was within that 3D environment, and we can place the vehicles involved in it to establish where they were. In this particular case, it was to establish which vehicle was on its correct side of the road and which had strayed at the point of impact. So these are, again, the sort of uses that we can use with the technology that we have. We can do simulations in a 3D environment as well. So when we have marks that vehicles have left at a scene which have been secured by the police or by other photographs, we can run a simulation which takes into account weights of vehicles, the tire forces that were involved, momentum exchange between vehicles, and we can run the simulation through the 3D environment. So in this particular case, you can see a vehicle coming down, striking it, and you watch it pass over the marks that was recorded by police, and we have an accurate speed, approach speed, and times of both vehicles that were involved. So again, a very useful tool. And what we can also do is take a 3D model, and we can run that simulation and see what the respective parties saw as they were traveling through the scene. So in this case, it would be the vehicle that's pulled out. Those are the times and the speeds that we're looking at. Now, again, in the UK, we have, especially around London and built-up areas, we have major problems with lorries by virtue of their size and the limited view that you have of pedestrians and cyclists. So again, we've developed these techniques to assist in telling the story effectively to a court, whether it's to the judge in a civil case or whether it's to 12 people on a jury in a criminal case. So again, we can have a 3D environment such as this crossroads junction where a lorry came up to a stop line and then moved off and failed to appreciate that there was a pedestrian crossing the road in front of them. So this is the 3D image of the junction. But what we've also done is taken the lorry that was involved that you see here on the left-hand side, and we've mapped out various lines of sight and mirror views that the driver would have had. And having mapped them out and scanned it, we can then produce a 3D image that shows exactly those lines of sight that towards the ground that the driver would have, and also the mirror views. The green one here is the close proximity mirror to the front that a driver should rely on to check his blind spot before moving off. Having created that model, we can then move that model back into the collision scene that is scanned as you see here. And we can then place a model of the pedestrian that was involved within that view, and you can see that the pedestrian walking across on a crossing in this particular case at the point when the lorry would have moved off would have been visible above about the level of the hips and the view through the windscreen. So it would produce very compelling evidence for a court as to whether the driver could or could not have seen somebody before moving off, in testing whether, in fact, they were driving in a careful and competent manner. So that's the way that in the UK, most police forces now are working towards this standard. But certainly in the private sector, in the company that we're in, we use this evidence on virtually a daily basis to answer some of these questions. We're also looking at other detail in terms of the engineering side of things, whether people were wearing seatbelts at the time, what the speed of a vehicle might have been from frozen speedos where there's a power loss at impact, and whether we can carry out light bulb analysis to see whether light bulbs were on at the time or otherwise. We can examine airbags. In this particular case, I think it's fairly obvious that a lady dressed up ready for her night out has made contact with that. We can see the lipstick, the eyeshadow, the blusher, the makeup that's transferred to the bag at impact there. And then there's other data that's available of modern vehicles in terms of data that's stored in things like airbag control modules, which again can give us a huge amount of data to assist in the reconstruction of the accident. So again, a fairly technical analysis that would be required, but a lot of detail. We can see when brakes came on and off. We can see look at the position of a vehicle and its speed on the approach to an impact. And we can calculate the speeds of vehicles once we've got that information out. So there's a huge amount that we can do on a fairly technical level if we're instructed when we look into collision investigation. There's more that I could carry on with, but I think that perhaps just gives you an insight into the level of detail that we bring to bear on any collision that we're instructed in or police are called to. Be very happy to take any questions from anybody. You're still muted, Babs.
Yes. Thank you very much, Paul. Josh, that's quite a lot. And I see that you cover the A3, which I drive through a lot, so I'm going to be extra careful next time. Yes. So you've given a lot of detail, and actually, it does. You employ a lot of disciplines, as you said, especially in the sciences, maths, physics, engineering, and all that comes to bear when you are giving evidence as an expert witness. I mean, I work in the magistrates courts, and well, when I used to cover crime, well, we had cases involving careless driving, sometimes involving heavy goods vehicles, especially those along the M25 that had come from say Europe, and I think even the issues that Dr. Oladende raised about driver hours and issues like that, where something that the courts, especially the prosecutors, called on experts such as yourself to give evidence in that regard. But I think it's quite interesting because for those who are scientists or aspiring scientists, I mean, it does show that there is a lot of work that can be achieved. I think in assisting, for example, the Ministry of Transport in achieving the goals of road safety. I know when I was speaking previously to Dr. Oladende, he mentioned that the Lagos State University, I believe, has a department that is specializing in kind of road transportation. So I think that bodes well, really, for the future, and long may that continue. And I just think that for the future, and especially knowing you, you know, there might be the opportunity. Who knows? You might be called on to give some consultancy advice. Advice as we progress with our infrastructure plans in Nigeria. So thank you very much for that. And I think really, having heard from the kind of issues about law enforcement in the UK and how the justice sector makes use of expert evidence, we can now move on to dealing with justice issues in Nigeria and how these matters are enforced. So we're going to be hearing from Ebenezer Eguatu Esquire. He's a legal practitioner, a trained medical assessor, and as well as the patient's rights and safety advocate. He is the founder of the Lawyers Arise for People initiative, which is a non-governmental organization that promotes and advocates the rights of patients who seek medical care in hospitals. From 2017 to 20, Ebenezer was external prosecutor to the Directorate of Road Transport Services, where he prosecuted traffic offenders before the mobile court, the Vehicle Inspection Office, VIO, mobile court, Federal Capital Territory in Abuja. Ebenezer was called to the bar in 2012 and is head of litigation and dispute resolution at the Raphael Adakole and Co.
Adakole.
Lighthouse Chambers in Abuja. So over to you, Ebenezer.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Good evening, co-facilitators and viewers. I would firstly start by apologizing for not sending my slides. There was last minute accident. I had explained that to the host, and I would just read what I was able to put together to ensure that I do not turn down this invitation. It's really painful. Okay, I start by way of introduction. Now, I said that the far-reaching effects of road traffic accidents cannot be overemphasized. Some families have completely been annihilated, others rendered totally bankrupt as a result of medical bills incurred in the treatment of family members who are victims of road traffic accidents. This paper is focused on the legal ingredients necessary for improving safety of heavy-duty vehicles in Nigeria, thereby reducing incidences of road traffic accidents, particularly the avoidable ones. There are ones that may not be avoidable. That's why they are accidents. However, the ones that could be avoided should be avoided. The set objectives for this presentation are four. One is to identify the factors that predispose heavy-duty vehicles to road traffic accidents. Then the second one is to examine already existing laws that regulate the use of heavy-duty vehicles on Nigerian roads. Then thirdly, we shall be looking at the level of compliance, to ascertain the level of compliance by the users, particularly drivers and owners of heavy-duty vehicles in Nigeria. Then the last one is to suggest or proffer solutions to mitigating incidents of road traffic accidents, particularly by heavy-duty vehicle. What I did in the course of preparing for this presentation was to not just read up materials, not just Google or pick up facts here and there, but to actually engage with heavy-duty vehicle drivers. Yes, I have prosecuted for VIO for 3 years. However, we rarely had cases. It was just very few occasions because the main focus of the mobile court then was within the city to decongest, because you just come, you see people parking where they are not supposed to park. You see people, because of cases of one chance, which is more like criminal picking of passengers. The criminals pose as drivers, and they just pick up innocent and unsuspecting passengers. Before you know, the person is dispossessed of his or her items. So the FCT administration set up the mobile courts to ensure, firstly, that drivers complied with the rules, because we also had incidences of people who were not commercial drivers per se, using private vehicles to render commercial services. In that case, you will see somebody maybe who is a victim of kidnapping. Because the vehicle is a private vehicle, you may not really know or suspect that. You will just think, okay, they are family, they are friends, and so that was what happened. So we didn't have much of heavy-duty vehicles. The few we had were cases of maybe broken or flat, or people who didn't have spare tires, broken side mirrors or broken windscreen, persons driving without a driver's license, then teenage drivers who obviously are not old enough to handle such heavy-duty vehicles. So let's make progress. I tried to define the term, what is heavy-duty vehicle, and regulation 148, subsection 9 of or subparagraph 9 of the National Road Traffic Regulation 2012 as amended defines heavy-duty vehicle as a vehicle that is capable of carrying a load of more than 750 kilograms. So any vehicle that is capable of carrying a load more than 750 kilograms, it's categorized as a heavy-duty vehicle. So what are the factors that could predispose these vehicles to road accidents in Nigeria? Number one is lack of proper training and regular retraining of heavy-duty vehicle drivers in the management and control of the vehicle. You see someone who learns driving with maybe a Toyota Camry or any other lesser vehicle, and over the years, the person just feels he can maneuver. Then some of them follow as conductors helping out. And at the end of the day, they find themselves driving. So what I did, I engaged one experienced heavy-duty driver who drives for a company. He has driven for over 20 years. And I asked him how he learned. He told me he learned by following someone else. And I asked him, is there any special school where you went for training for heavy-duty vehicle driving? He said no. So I wasn't satisfied with his answer. I called, of course, a VIO official that I know, and I asked him, sir, is there a special school where these heavy-duty vehicle drivers are trained? He said no. Of course, I know the answer that there is none, but I just asked so that it won't be that I am stating my own opinion. So, and as he said, it's when you come for licensing that you will now be given a form to fill to indicate the type of license you want to obtain or you want issued to you. And I said, obviously, that is wrong. Because if this person has not learned properly, or what I responded to the driver that I called, I said, if you learned from a wrong master who doesn't know, because you can't give what you don't have. So if you learn from a wrong master, you will invariably drive wrongly on the road. Then, poor knowledge of road signs. A lot of these people are illiterates. Poor knowledge of road signs, mostly the private operators, because I am aware that corporate organizations do conduct trainings. In fact, before they employ you, they will subject you to thorough driving tests, part of which you will be subjected to identifying some road signs and all that. So you have to pass it. But for the private users, a good number of them are illiterate and cannot really interpret road signs. Overspeeding is a factor. Overload or excess weight on the vehicle is a factor. We'll discuss this later. Then old vehicles. Some of these vehicles are almost rickety and not roadworthy. But because, like the Honorable Commissioner mentioned earlier, it's the same problem here. They said they don't have money to change. Then you have bad roads. Bad roads. These vehicles are heavy duty, as we know. Unfortunately, some of our roads here are not up to standard. The construction is done hastily, maybe to meet up with a target or meet up with a set date or deadline. When these roads are constructed freshly, the heavy duty vehicles come with their weight, thereby disfiguring the surface of the road. A classic example is from Abaji, here in Abuja to Lokoja. You will see contours, deep gullies almost, deep contours on the road caused by the weight of different heavy-duty vehicles plying that road. So my appeal here is that the government should look into ensuring that the constructions are of high standard and quality. Then we have lack of proper maintenance of the vehicles themselves. Then pedestrians who also do not obey traffic rules, because pedestrians are also road users. Careless crossing of the road, refusal to use pedestrian bridges where these bridges are properly provided. Then you have reckless driving, you have environmental factors too. That's just a few of the factors that predispose them to accidents. You have an issue of drugs and intoxicants which the drivers subject themselves to, substance abuse. Then we're looking now at laws and subsidiary legislations that regulate use of heavy-duty vehicles in Nigeria. I just made a list of these laws. We have the Federal Highway Act, we have the Road Traffic Act, we have the Federal Road Safety Establishment Act 2007, we have the National Road Traffic Regulations 2012 as amended. A few sections of this act were repealed by the 2016 Act, so by the 2016 amendment rather. We have the Federal Highway Prohibition of Livestock and Handcraft Regulation. Unfortunately, here we have herders heading their cows on the highway, on the expressway. And these animals, they are not humans. They have a mind of their own. Sometimes they could just run into oncoming vehicle and that will cause an accident. But this law is in place to checkmate that. Not just livestock, but even cart pushing on the highway, federal highway, is prohibited. So there is need to begin to enforce these laws. We have the Federal Highway Permissible Weight and Bridge Regulation. I also engaged the truck driver I spoke with on this law, the practicability. I asked him how many times he has gone to weigh his truck to know the weight or the load the truck is carrying. And he told me that the last time that thing happened was when we still had toll gates in Ibadan and other cities. So when the trucks arrive at the toll gates, there is the weight bridge there. There was one he mentioned that used to be in Lagos at 7-Up. When you load, you go there way before you proceed on your journey. But unfortunately, that is no longer obtainable because the toll gates have been removed. But that's not the position of the law. The law did not say that these weighing scales or bridges should just be at the toll gates. The law provides that they should be mounted at different areas of the highway so that as the truck is passing, the relevant officials could actually stop the truck and weigh it there to find out whether it is carrying the appropriate weight. So overloading, we have mentioned as one of the factors responsible for accidents. But if we begin to implement this law, we could actually curb overloading first. Then we have, of course, Lagos has always been ahead when it comes to law. Honorable Commissioner, please extend my regards to the wonderful members of Lagos State Houses of Assembly. They have always been pacesetters. They have always been pacesetters. It's after Lagos have done, then we begin to copy from Lagos. So we have the Lagos State Administration Law, or the Road Traffic Administration Law of Lagos State, and by extension, that of other states. Now, let me just pick a few sections of these regulations. Number one is Section 148, subsection 1. It provides that the appropriate authority may at any time and for reasonable cost require a commercial vehicle or trailer to be driven to any reasonable convenient place to have its net gross weight ascertained. That's what I mentioned earlier. So Section 148 provides that you or empowers the relevant agencies to weigh on the road. But how can this be done where we do not have the weighing implements or the weighing equipment or the weighing mechanisms in place? So this is a lacuna. The law has been provided, but we need to implement this. So once we have this, we can easily tackle cases of overload. Then subsection 2 requires or says the same thing almost, but they have to be installed gadgets for the purpose of weighing. The first one I read empowers the authority to weigh. The second one, subsection 2, provides for the establishment or installation of the weighing gadgets. Then subsection 3 requires every person driving to obey road signs. Of course, we know that. It also requires every person driving heavy duty vehicle to submit his vehicle for weighing. Where he refuses is an offense. Now, I am really happy about this particular session because it was one of the amendments. That's section 148 of the National Road Traffic Act, or regulation rather. Now, in the old session, in the old provision of 2012, the penalty for this failure was 2,000 naira. But here, the penalty is 200,000. 200,000 for heavy duty vehicles. So, if we begin to enforce this law, nobody will want to pay that amount of money. Your employer as a driver will not take that from you, that you carried an overload, and as a result of that, they are fining him 200,000. Then for every other vehicles which carries overload, the fine is 10,000 naira. Then section 5 requires every person in control of heavy duty vehicles, or subsection 5 rather, to pass through that same weighing bridge. So that emphasizes the importance. The last one, not the least, or rather, let me just summarize. The whole of section 148 talks about that weighing, overload. But I concluded on this session by saying that we have this law, but it is not practicable. So until we begin to put this law in place, by implementing it, we may still be chasing shadows when it comes to solving road traffic problems. This is just an aspect. Then we come to section 149, very important section again. It says that the license should be issued by appropriate authorities for driving of agricultural machines, articulated vehicles, earth-moving vehicles, trailers, or spirit-carrying tankers. But what we have here is where people just go and verbally tell the officer, I want to drive so and so vehicle. I want to drive so and so vehicle. In fact, there are people who do not even, you will sit in your house and your license will be brought to you. But I must also say that used to be then. It is no longer possible now because you must be subjected to physical capturing. You can no longer do that. Then we have the driver's license issued must be upon completion of driving test, except corporate organizations. Individual owners rarely subject their drivers to driving tests. Once you tell them you can drive and you drive for them to see you, they will give you the vehicle. But like I said earlier, corporate bodies, organizations, they don't do that. They are doing well in this aspect. Now, subsection 4 is important because it empowers the relevant authorities, VIO, road safety, or any other officer in charge of road traffic or road safety to actually withdraw, revoke, or suspend the license of a person who he presumes not to be fit and proper to drive a heavy duty vehicle. Up north here, we have hugely underaged teenagers driving these vehicles. Some of them are mostly under the influence of drugs. But if we begin to implement this law, that you see someone and he is 17, even though he has a big bodily stature that makes him look above 17. But you ask him, most times they don't, you ask them, how old are you? Even the ones we prosecute. How old are you? The person tells you he's 16. How old are you? The person tells you he's 17. He's not up to, by law, to drive. So we prosecute them. But the law says you should revoke his license because he's not fit and proper to drive. So when people begin to know that the license could be revoked, then I made one of my suggestions is that it is not enough to revoke the license, but we should also set up a database If you revoke Mr. A's license, you capture his details and put it in the database, such that where he's caught somewhere again tomorrow with either fake license or with the vehicle, all you need to do is to impute his name in the database. Has this person been an offender before? Has this person been suspended before? Once you put in his details, you will see that this person has offended before. So you can take up another level of penalty against it. Now, I asked a question here. I said, how many driving schools do we have in Nigeria? The answer as in driving schools for utility, heavy duty vehicles, we don't. Then the next one is the level of compliance. The level of compliance. We might say that there is high level of compliance, but I stand to be corrected. It is not really so, because if there is high level of compliance, we won't be having the data that the host read out. I didn't want to go into all that so that I can maximize my time. The data he read out on the number of accidents that occurs in a year. In fact, I actually read the data that reported that in 2013, Nigeria was regarded as the highest in Africa with road traffic accidents. And I felt bad reading that in 2013. So, given the rates, there is obviously need for more compliance. So we can say that the compliance is low. And what are the reasons? Inadequate sensitization of drivers of heavy duty vehicles by relevant agencies. Yes, the road traffic, they are doing their best. They are trying. We must give it to them. But there is need to do more. Now, how do we do more? Step down this information to the language these people understand. When you are on your television and you're speaking your big grammar, when you are on your radio and you're speaking your big grammar, how many persons are listening? I mean, the targeted audience now. But I know they have union. Among that their union, they have their local language they speak. Can programs, sensitization or awareness programs be packaged to suit them in their language? There is nothing wrong in teaching road traffic rules in Hausa language or in Igbo language or in Yoruba language, because the essence is that this person understands this thing and begins to do the right thing. High level of illiteracy is there. Then there is this false sense of expertise and ability to avoid errors. So when you are talking, the person, even if when you have provided a platform for the person to learn, the person just believes, I have driven this thing for 5 years, for 10 years. I once had a friend who told me that, as at that time, that was 2012, he told me that he has been driving for 11 years and he had never had one accident. So to him, he's proficient in driving. And there is nothing you will tell him now about road use and traffic rules that he will listen to, because he believes that he's an expert. Then influence of drugs and a false sense of invincibility. You just believe that nothing will happen to you. It can happen to the next person, but you are safe. Then our fine or penalty is monetary based. So there is this sense of how much is the fine. You call Oga, Oga sends the money, and you pay the fine and go away. But if we can do a kind of tweaking on our punishment or penalty, while the fine will be there, we could attach community service to that fine so that the person doesn't just pay fine and walk away, but let the person do something in addition to the fine. Depending on the gravity of the offense, we could even attach minimal, maybe 1 week prison term. The intention is not to punish or to inflict hardship on the person, but the intention is just to make the person know that it's not all about the money, because it appears that, okay, how much money did we make today? So you find a situation where officers go out and even where they could correct. Our system is not preventive, it is punitive. So we could make it more preventive, where you see someone wanting to commit a crime or a traffic offense. You don't wait and allow you. That happens often in Abuja. The police people at the traffic, by the traffic lights, some of them go and hide somewhere, waiting for a vehicle that will beat the traffic lights. Then they will jump out and catch the vehicle and penalize the driver. What is the penalty? You pay money. Why don't you stand there if your presence will prevent the crime ab initio or the offense? So we should be more preventive in our approach. Then suggested solutions to curb or reduce, mitigate incidences of accidents involving high or heavy duty vehicles, improve quality of our road construction. Once we do that, we know that the road is good. When we talk about roadworthiness of the vehicle, we should also be talking about the road itself being vehicle worthy. So it's not just about the vehicle being roadworthy. The road should also be vehicle worthy. Then we have full implementation of the road traffic laws by the relevant agencies. We have the laws, but there is need to begin to implement them. Some people will say laws do not work in Nigeria. It's not necessarily so. We have a lot of laws that have not been activated. We have not tested them in courts. So if we begin to put these laws in place, there will be a reduction of the laws. Then we have full implementation of section 142 of 148 subsection 2, which talked about revocation, suspension of the license. Then we have, I mentioned it earlier, setting up a database for offenders where their identity will be captured, and if there is subsequent violation, they could be punished more severely, or the person will be noted as a regular or habitual offender. Then I suggested there is need to set up special driving schools for training of heavy duty drivers, heavy duty vehicle drivers. I talked about use of technology, installation of CCTV, and installation of CCTV. Not just that, there is an app someone developed that could easily help you report incidents. So the relevant is called Quick Amp here in Nigeria. It doesn't need internet to operate. The relevant agencies who have this app and popularize it and encourage Nigerians. They are humans, they can't be everywhere. I am here now in Abuja. I am within a location, an enclosed environment. I don't know what is happening outside, but someone is there. So where the road safety officials are not around or readily available, Nigerians should use this app to report incidences of road traffic violation. Okay, this vehicle number so and so did this. You report it. Then I know it is prone to abuse, but they will have a way of investigating and proper things should be done. Then finally, I suggested that corporate organizations should be penalized where their drivers are habitual offenders. So if a particular driver keeps making the company pay fine for violation of traffic rules, the driver will know that he is doing so at the risk of losing his job. So if corporate organizations, not the individual now, maybe company A's driver does something, you find the company heavily. Company B driver does something, you find the company heavily. It will now make the company to caution their drivers. Now, I said corporate because these are the ones we can readily control. Then there will also be need to put a modality in place to regulate the private users. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you very much, Ebenezer. That was very enlightening. I think we would be grateful for a list of the legislation you referred to and the various laws, because as you said, there's a myriad of them. And I think in this kind of session, when we are talking about laws and their effectiveness, what I would hope is that in due course, in fact, as you mentioned, for example, Lagos State Assembly, I think it's very important that our lawmakers are aware of the laws and also how to put them in place. Because these days, there's a lot of kind of sentiment. For example, you did mention about the cows on the road, and it will be interesting for, like I say, legislators, even government officials, to know what laws are in place and how they can be implemented. I also found interesting when you mentioned, for example, about the corporate bodies. They very much should be partners when we are talking about, improving road safety. And I expect by corporate bodies, you mean like, the big, probably multinationals, such as oil companies, big construction companies, and so forth.
Exactly, sir.
Yes, will probably are the more compliant than maybe the
private owners.
The private people. Yes, the union, as you said, plays a very important role, because really they are the ones who are in touch with the drivers themselves, and I think they have a primary responsibility in ensuring safety. For example, that they aren't underage drivers. I mean, you do talk about prosecuting underage drivers. I mean, in this CJAG session, we've had in fact two sessions on children in the criminal court system, in the criminal justice system. So it is interesting that there are underage drivers who are prosecuted, and I suspect that sometimes it might be they might not even have a choice in the matter, because whether someone in authority, be their parents or
that's actually the challenge.
Yes,
that's actually the challenge. I was racing for time, and another challenge is this issue of I have someone in power.
Oh yes,
I am the son of Mr. A. I am the son of Mr. B. Mr. C is my father.
So
you impound a traffic offender, and someone comes or calls. In fact, I will give a vivid example.
Yes.
And
Ebenezer, I'm conscious of the time, and I just want to be able to open the floor to see whether there are any questions or comments that we have, and it could be that one of those comments would be about really what you're raising, which is an issue of corruption, and really which prevents effective enforcement of the laws. So perhaps if we can, if anyone has a question, if you just either you write on the chat, or in fact, if you just if you do the reaction and you wave, then I could unmute you and you could ask your question. Or please, it would just have to be a very brief question. Just introduce yourself and ask the question, and then we can deal with that. As I said, my other speakers, like the commissioner, I knew he had very little time available, so he said he wouldn't be here for the plenary. And I think Paul also has had to go, but I can see, I believe, I can see a raised hand here. Let me try and get to you, Bolanle. So I can mute you. Can you unmute yourself?
Yes, I'm unmuted. You've
All
unmuted.
right. Okay. Yes. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Mr. Eguatu. Thank you for that presentation. That was really interesting stuff. So thank you. I just wondered, you made some suggestions about, like the database and, things about the weighing scales, the weighing equipment for the vehicles, the training and driving schools and so on. Who would be responsible for those? So, if one wanted to approach, I don't know, an organization or the government, who would actually implement those things that you suggested?
The government should. For the weighing scales, it is expressly provided in the law. It is expressly provided that these weighing scales should be installed along the road such that there will be traffic road safety officers there. Any vehicle and any heavy duty vehicle that they feel this one, the weight it carries might be excess, it stops by and weighs it. So the essence of that is
It's frozen.
Looks like Ebenezer is frozen. Yes. For what I gathered, he said it's the government that's responsible for installing the weigh bridges. Interesting question, because it just struck me. Which government would that be? The federal government?
He's a license rather.
All right.
How would the person in Lagos, if you revoke his license in Abuja and he goes to Lagos and continues to operate even without license? We have prosecuted people who are driving without driver's license. So if we have that database, there is a network of results. Mr. A has offended in Abuja, has violated the rule in Abuja. So when he goes to Lagos and violates the rule, the Lagos office will be able to know that he's a serial violator because I've done it in Abuja. All that needs to be done is to key in his identity, his name, with his photograph, and his information will show on the screen. So if everybody knows, nobody will want to bear that psychological trauma of I am a serial offender. Nobody will want to have that label. So the government should be responsible for that.
Okay. Thank you. And as Babs was saying, would that be the state government, or the federal government?
Okay, for federal roads, let's make it easier. For federal roads, the federal government should be responsible for that. Then the states, like I said, I eulogize Lagos State. They take initiatives. They do things ahead of time. So if only other states could borrow from Lagos to even do up to what Lagos has done. I made a suggestion here for usage of CCTV. The Honorable Commissioner mentioned that they are already thinking along that line. So if the states could even do half of what Lagos have done, then the problem will be minimized by a huge percentage.
Okay, and just the last one, the driving schools, does that have to be government run, or can...
No, not necessarily government
that's
run.
good business for somebody, if somebody wants to operate that.
Not necessarily government run, but government licensing individuals who are interested to run that business. It will be capital intensive because you need to acquire trucks on the ground. So that if anybody comes to train, the person also needs to pay huge money. It's like going to university or so, because if the person damages the truck, it is a huge loss for the school. So it's a capital intensive business. Anybody who is interested could approach. I do not know whether there's a proposal for that or not, but whoever is listening could pick it up and give it a try. Make it a proposal for package a proposal to the government for that, in conjunction, of course, with road safety, VIO, and other relevant agencies, and Ministry of Transport as well, for that to be in place. Then, at least for corporate drivers, for corporate organizations, their drivers should be certified by the school. They are not going there to learn driving, but for regulation purposes, they should just go pay a little fee for a certification. The school will subject them to tests, and they will be recertified that they have passed these tests. Then they can go back.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions, any hands raised, or not that I can't see? But actually, just following on from what Ebenezer just said about the corporate bodies, I wonder whether there's anyone on this platform who can speak about the private sector in terms of, so I'm thinking of a big corporation and how they deal, for example, with driver training or even maintenance of vehicles. So like maybe someone involved in a multinational, oil company, or, for the sake of description, Dangote, and so forth, because it'd be interesting to know how, those companies, especially companies that are foreign subsidiaries, for example, how they manage their fleet, because presumably the laws of the compliance in their parent companies, whether in Europe or in the US or whatever, would apply, I would have thought, in terms of maintenance, and maybe even in terms of the age of the vehicles, because the commissioners said that, a lot of the heavy goods vehicles are, say, around 40 years old, except those owned by corporate bodies. So it would be interesting to have that angle. Just to say that, I was discussing this with Ebenezer and also with Dr. Oladende, that I would like to host another session on transportation, because I think this is just really touching the surface. I mean, this is dealing primarily with road safety by heavy goods vehicles, but there's so much transportation that I think has been raised so far. When I just think back to Paul's presentation, and with all the technology involved in accident investigation, collisions, and giving evidence, not only in criminal courts, but also in civil courts, because there's also civil liability. I mean, if there's an accident, and apart from, say, fatalities and personal injury, there's also the loss of the goods. So, who is responsible for that? What happens? And I think that's an issue for the insurance industry. So there's quite a lot that one can talk about. I hope you have found this session interesting. Like I say, I apologize that the other speakers have not been able to stay on. I say they are extremely busy. I know Paul has been involved, and he still has a lot of court cases he has to prepare for, even next week. But I'm going to repeat more on the transport section, and I'll be grateful, Ebenezer, if you can provide just an outline of the laws and regulations.
I will mail them to you immediately after this.
That would
I'll
be
mail
great.
them to you immediately.
Yes, and then anybody who wants them can get in touch with me.
Yes, even the paper could be. I will mail you the presentation. I'll just mail you the outline.
Excellent. So, like I said, this session will be available on YouTube. But if you want any information, my email, CJAG law@gmail.com. The other thing I wanted to say, in fact, probably slightly related to this event, on the 1st of July, I'm co-hosting an event with the British Nigeria Law Forum, and it's about a case that was heard by the UK Supreme Court, a judgment that was handed in February of this year. And it does involve Shell, the Shell Oil Company, Royal Dutch Shell Company, and Shell Nigeria. And on the other side are some villagers, a community in Rivers State that took Shell to court. And the case came to the UK, went through the High Court's Court of Appeal, and was heard by the UK Supreme Court. Essentially, in a nutshell, it states that the UK parent company, Royal Dutch Shell Company, is liable for the actions of the subsidiary in Nigeria. So I have got some eminent speakers, both from, in fact, the UK and Nigeria, and that's going to be on the 1st of July. It's co-hosted with the British Nigeria Law Forum. So I'll be putting information out, and I hope you will find that matter interesting. It's going to cover issues like corporate law, environmental law, and really issues about the justice sector in Nigeria, because I'm very concerned that there are quite a number of cases that are being held outside Nigeria. And just think, well, we do have a judiciary, and what's happening with that? So that's an issue for another day. I'm just having a look to see whether there's any questions or comments. Let me just check the chat box, see whether I have missed anything. No, Madonna has kindly put my email address on the chat box, cjaglaw@gmail.com. So do get in touch with me. Other than that is to, well, first of all, say thank you very much to my speakers for today. Honorable Commissioner for Transportation in Lagos State, Dr. Frederick Oladende, Paul Tidyman, Senior Consultant at FCIR, based in Croydon, and Ebenezer Egwatu, Esquire, who, thank you very much for joining us. I must say that Ebenezer, in addition to his role as a prosecutor and a legal practitioner, he also is very much involved in patients' rights, and we did have an extensive discussion about that. And last of all, thank you, every one of you, for supporting the cause and joining me. And thank you to my team, Madonna, Sheyi, Iboko, for I'm really dependent on their help to be able to run the sessions. So thank you very much, and I wish you all a great weekend. Goodbye.
Thank you, sir. Goodbye.